Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski of WeAreChange.org. And as we know, we had major news coming from Donald Trump yesterday, ultimately announcing the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria. Of course, a couple neocon pundits and warmongers said that this will be a disaster, and the American public in large responded with, wait, hey, we have troops in Syria? What? A big surprise to a lot of people because, again, a lot of this stuff was done covertly and there's a lot of information. And again, I want to get to the bigger question here. Is Trump really doing this? And what's the bigger motivation, the bigger deal made here? And to talk about that, plus a lot more, we have Partisan Girl all the way across the world with her sources in Syria and, of course, her on-the-ground information, which, of course, I look very much forward to hearing from, because Partisan Girl, when you talk about the news and what happened here, mainly the people resisting it are people like Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Vox, and CNN, which those are the people resisting the news of Donald Trump announcing the troop withdrawal, and those people don't usually have the best of records, to say the least. And it's kind of telling that these people are resisting it because it kind of looks like a good thing, because ultimately there really is no good argument against keeping the U.S. troops in there. As Michael Tracy on Twitter says, it's pretty much an elite-driven preoccupation. This was never debated. There's no goal to this. We don't know what we're doing there. The American people barely even knew it was there, but people in general don't like war. And overall, this was taken positively, but we still have to look at the bigger context here, because again, this is pretty much Donald Trump and the U.S. government declaring victory over a U.S. government-created terrorist group. Some people are saying that this is Bush's moment of, we're bringing the troops back, we're ending the Iraq war, mission accomplished. What do you take it, and what is your reaction, Partisan Girl, from your sources on the ground about this latest news?
Well, a lot of people, regular people, are not sure what to believe. They don't know whether to trust that this pullout is actually going to happen, because every time Trump or the United States has ever said anything along the lines of, we're no longer going to pursue regime change or we're going to pull out, it's then followed by a chemical attack which causes a strike of some kind. And that's exactly what happened in 2017. The minute there was any indication from the U.S. administration and Trump that, we're not there for regime change, we're giving up on regime change, then that chemical attack happened. So there is the possibility of someone, a spoiler, who's trying to stop this from happening, of creating some kind of a false flag attack. And the people like Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, all the warmongers, the people that created ISIS in the first place, the neo-libs and the neocons, they're the ones that are against this, because they worked so hard to create ISIS in the first place to provide a pretext for what the US is really in Syria to do, which is to balkanize the country and make sure that it can never stand on its feet again. Especially because the region they occupy contains like 80% of the oil resources. It's got a lot of water, a lot of agriculture, and it's like the size of Croatia, and 22 million Syrians rely on that, and they're going to need it more than ever to be able to rebuild the country. So occupying that region prevents Syria from getting back up on its feet. And not only that, but also the sanctions that they've placed on Syria, and preventing building materials from getting into the country. That's another thing that they've been doing. It's in line with that strategy, as well as the long-term idea that they had to create perpetual war in the Middle East by balkanizing the Middle East into these small ethnocentric enclaves, like a Kurdistan here or a Shiite there, a Sunni there. And that was, planned since the 80s. So that has been the plan since the 80s. However, that plan, even though the likes of Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham think is achievable, has become suddenly not so achievable anymore. There's some big threat that has made the US's position even more untenable in Syria. Not only are they breaching international law by being there, but now they're being threatened by their own NATO allies. So What I think is
I also think
behind this
it's
decision.
I
Please
also think
continue.
it's definitely China in a way. And what was really interesting was also seeing Israel say, yeah, we respect this decision. Now, before getting into kind of the bigger deal that's made here, obviously the US media right now is focusing on Putin, and they're talking about how, oh yes, Putin's happy about this. RT, the Russian funded news organization, is saying that Putin is saying that this is the right move to make, but there's, quote, no signal of them actually leaving Afghanistan. Now, this deal reportedly happened after Donald Trump got out of a phone call with the Turkish leadership. And that's why I wanted to ask you here, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is going to be a key component here, especially with the Kurds that were previously aligned with the United States. With the United States leaving, if they're even leaving officially, how do you see this kind of greater relationship expanding and developing between the Kurds and the Turks? Will it be a bloodbath, or did Donald Trump make a deal with the Kurds to prevent a bigger war evolving between the Kurds and the Turks?
Trump didn't make a deal to protect the Kurds. Basically, Israel isn't happy that this is happening. So Israel saying that they respect the decision means that they can't do anything about it. They don't like this decision, as can be seen by the reaction of the Israeli lobby in the United States. This has been their long-term strategy to weaken Syria, to create this Kurdistan, and they've been one of the proponents of it, because what the US is trying to do in Syria is not defeat ISIS. ISIS was just a placeholder. What they really wanted to do was create this Kurdistan. But that is a direct threat to Turkey, because essentially what the US has been doing is providing weapons and training to what the Turks and the Americans have listed as a terrorist organization. The PKK, which was an anarcho-communist militia responsible for multiple suicide bombings, is listed as a terrorist organization in both Turkey and the United States, and they have a direct link to the YPG, which the US is supporting. They are both militias of the same political party called PYD. And this was highlighted by the fact that when the YPG took over Raqqa, they put up a poster of Öcalan, which is the leader of the PKK, and which the US considers a terrorist. So essentially, the US has been funding terrorists which are the biggest threat to Turkey, because, put this into perspective. Syria has 1.5 million Kurds. Turkey has over 15 million. So, of course, theirs is a much bigger threat for their territorial integrity. As a result, last week, if you saw some statements coming out of the CIA and the Pentagon especially, one of these soldiers said to the Washington Post that we're going to stay in Syria indefinitely, and that they're creating these outposts, observation posts on the Syrian-Turkish border, which means that when you put an observation post somewhere, it means that whatever is on the other side of that border is an enemy or a threat. So the US putting an observation posts on the Syrian-Turkish border is saying that Turkey is the enemy. Secondly, and Turkey is a part of NATO. Like, this is how crazy this is. And then they said that they're going to build a Kurdish army, like a 40,000 strong Kurdish army, to like kind of solidify and stabilize their position in Syria so they can stay there indefinitely. And they wanted, to control the oil and resources of Syria indefinitely and use the Kurds to do it. Turkey saw that and they said, well, that's it. We can't take this anymore. We're going to have to invade this side of Syria, because Turkey has already invaded the northwest side of Syria. Now they basically, Erdogan called Trump and he said, we're going to invade the northeast side where you are, in order to attack the Kurdish YPG, which you've been arming, by the way. And if it so happens that you get in our way, like your soldiers are in the way, then they're just going to be caught in the crossfire and they may die. Now, Turkey and the US are allies and they're both part of NATO. Imagine if Turkish soldiers are killing the YPG, which US soldiers are embedded in, and then clashes and firefights break out between them because, American soldiers are going to want to save their own lives. They're gonna break out. Basically, they said we can either stay allies or you can leave.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good important aspect, because even with American politics, if you look, we saw Pentagon rebels fighting CIA rebels, and sometimes that chaos was fine. But NATO is a huge component to the U.S. kind of power worldwide, and Turkey has been very kind of flaky. They've kind of been on the Russian side a little bit. They've been on the American side. Originally, it looked like there was going to be a major conflict between Turkey and Russia, with Turkey, of course, shooting down a Russian airplane. But ever since then, relations have been getting better and better and better, and that's why I wanted to ask you: do you think this deal was made to kind of appease Turkey, since they are a major component of NATO, and the United States wants to keep them aligned with them and not with Russia, which would completely change the power dynamics within the Middle East? And is there also a component of Putin kind of pushing away verbally and in other actions the Iranian influence inside of Syria, which of course would be a benefit to Israel? So in short, why did this happen? What's the bigger deal made here?
Well, first of all, Putin is heavily influenced by Israel, but he also has the pressure of being supportive of Syria. So he has both those pressures. The deal that was made between Iran, Turkey, and Russia, not the US. Yes, Turkey shot down a Russian jet. At the time, I thought, why aren't they not reacting? But they had the long-term plan that they wanted to pull Turkey away from the US and NATO and become more of Russia's stronger ally. And, at the beginning, everyone was vying for the Kurds alliance, but the Kurds were playing everyone, and then eventually they stuck with America. And Russia was like, well, you know what? If I could choose an ally, I would rather have Turkey because it's more powerful, and in that way, it could possibly break apart NATO. And the US probably, they thought, or at least the neocons thought, that at the end of the day, the most important thing to them is Israel. So they don't really mind if Turkey gets cut in half or is annoyed. And they are ready to play this game of chicken with Turkey and see if Turkey will invade. Whereas Trump's position might be that he's going to be responsible for the death of 2,000 American soldiers once the bullets start to fly, and that will be the end of his presidency. And the position that the U.S. is in was already tenuous to begin with. Tenuous. They have no legal jurisdiction to be in Syria. They're surrounded by the Syrian military. The Russians just installed an S-300 missile system close to Deir ez-Zor, which means that if the Syrian army chooses to cross the river and the Americans try to bomb them, those jets may be struck by the S-300 system. Also, the Syrian military at any point could choose to, make things, to turn up the heat, so to say. But then, and the Syrian army was beginning to surround and being ready to storm Al-Tanf border crossing, which is the other part of Syria that the U.S. controls, which is on the Jordanian border. So they were surrounding from the south, threatened from the east, and then to top it all off, suddenly Turkey decided it had enough, and they're being threatened from the north. So Trump had basically a decision: either risk the lives of however many U.S. soldiers are actually in there, they don't really tell you the real number, and sit there while the bullets start to fly, as Lindsey Graham and the rest want, because Turkey is going to invade if nothing changes, or they can leave. Now, given his tweets and his video on Twitter, he seems to have doubled down on this leaving thing, which is great. Hopefully he'll be allowed to do it. What happens next? The Kurds have two choices. either to ally themselves with Damascus, give up the land that is rightfully the land of all Syrian people back to the Syrian state and unify and, basically put their hands in the hands of the Syrian army and allow them in to prevent a Turkish invasion and to prevent, death and destruction. Or choice two, they can try to fight Turkey on their own and allow Turkey to occupy more parts of Syria. And based on their previous decision, like in Afrin, they decided not to ally with Syria, which resulted in a Turkish occupation of Afrin because they were pathetic against fighting Turkey. So now what are they going to do? If they do the same thing as last time, then definitely Turkey is going to invade that whole region. But at that time, they were sure that the US was going to come in and save them. Now perhaps they can realize that that's not the case. Maybe they will choose to be more smart about it this time. So we shall see. But no matter what, for Syria's position, getting rid of the US occupation is great, but we still have to deal with the Turkish occupation. We still have to deal with Al-Qaeda in Idlib and, these Kurdish militias. The war is not over for us yet. Yeah. And the US may still threaten Syria even without troops on the ground. They might still bomb Syria. They might still launch missiles from boats or give weapons. It's very unlikely they have any more steps to take in this chess game. But the war isn't over yet.
It's definitely not, but it looks like it's one step closer, and I do believe Trump is kind of doubling down on this statement and is committing on it, but there's a lot of other stuff to kind of look at, especially with the military defense budget going up to $750 billion when Donald Trump called the $716 billion budget crazy. He just approved a bigger one, which absolutely makes no sense. And again, just like you said, it's a very complicated situation. There's chess pieces all over the place. But Partisan Girl, thank you so much for helping us understand some of the pieces and some of the moves that are being made here. It's definitely an unwinnable situation in Syria, but I think yesterday's step by Donald Trump is a step in the right direction. It's still very complicated, but I think it's moving forward towards a bigger kind of peaceful resolution and less of a powder keg situation that we have seen so much throughout the years. Again, all the important context and information. If you disagreed with it, let me know why in the comment section below. And if you found it useful, share it with your friends and family members. And once again, thank you so much for allowing us to be here, providing real news, real information for you here by you through WeAreChange.org. Love you guys. Stay tuned for more. Sweet.